Frank, thanks for coming in and having a conversation with me today. And also thank you for being part of our advisory board. I know you got a lot on your plate with the Rodgers Group and all you're doing, but part of Extra Duty Solutions, having you on our advisory board, helping guide us a little bit on a national level, it's definitely beneficial to us. So, one of the things I wanted to talk about was both you and I have something in common. We're retired, from our profession, and both of us retired at a pretty high level. But you've been at it a lot longer than I have on the retirement side. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what you've seen, the changes, because I know in the short time I've been retired, it's just been a whirlwind of changes looking at law enforcement.
Sure. Well, I'm out 14 years, and I, like all of us, saw things change. And while I was still on the job, a move toward more accountability to public's expectations, growing by the day, more transparency. Better return on the investment of their tax dollars, things of that nature. The public's better educated today about what it is we do and why we do it, how we do it. So it's fundamentally altered some of the things that we used to do one particular way. Very difficult to articulate that we would continue to do it that way today.
No, same thing for me. So even in the relatively short time I've been retired, and even before, the last couple of years as chief, the perspective of, in my state, it was public records request, Oprah request. I know down in Florida, the Sunshine Law, where our public and particularly the media are asking a lot of questions about the nuances around how our officers are operating, what are the budgets or whatnot. And that's, one of the things when I was finishing up my career that Extra Duty helped us with. Extra Duty Solutions is really, it's a repository of all those records around Extra Duty for us. And it was just an incredible resource for me.
Sure.
One of the things that, one of the services that I had on a regular basis as a chief in my organization was at least every month or so, I would just get a total audit so I could keep up with it. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, the technology was there in a way through Extra Duty Solutions that I just didn't have as a city leader, because, I'm sure you see it. Technology and a lot of our states and city governments are unfortunately lagging behind.
No doubt. A lot of proprietary systems built with the best of intentions at a time when technology was really beginning to influence the way we did things. A lot of those legacy systems still exist today. They're difficult to navigate. They don't do what products like Extra Duty does for us today. When we go into a police department, help them write their policies, do those things. One of the accreditation standards has to do with off-duty employment and so on and so forth. So we have an opportunity to, respectfully suggest to the executive, that, look, there's a better, more effective, efficient way to do this. One that'll withstand any test that would be applied to it. Particularly one that if the public knew that we were managing things the way we did 25 years ago, they probably wouldn't be too happy about it.
Right. No, you're exactly right. A lot of the agencies that Extra Duty Solutions partners with, they haven't changed in the lifetime of the entire command staff. Right. One of the things I think is really fascinating is one of the questions we get is, well, what's it going to cost? Because being a retired guy from public safety like you, it seemed like we're used to a world where software costs us every year and one of the changes the update. And one of the beauty of the model of Extra Duty Solutions is, one, it doesn't cost the organization anything. Those costs are passed along to who's using it. But two, it's cloud-based, and it's always going to be updated without any cost to you. Extra Duty Solutions they own their own software company now.
Right. So it's all done in-house, right? So you guys are nimble enough to adapt to what you're seeing on a daily basis, right? So you have a footprint throughout the country. You have the benefit of being able to take all of these different things that you're learning every day, ideas that are being born, every day around the country that enable you to Extra Duty to enhance its product, but they don't have to outsource it. It's done in-house, and so we can prioritize what needs to be done, what's going to provide the customer, the law enforcement agency, the biggest bang, not for their buck, but for the client who, at the end of the day, the private vendor who is ultimately, paying the freight for this. So it's a win-win. The public wins because there are no real resources dedicated by the law enforcement agency to manage any of this stuff. That's done by Extra Duty. The client, the the vendor who was paying for the construction project or whatever it may be. This product is so much better designed to support them, and the officers themselves, right? Because it's you know, the product is very purposely built out of respect for their collective bargaining agreements, the different nuances that exist from department to department. It's not an off-the-shelf product that, hey, look, you got to make your business practice fit what, you know, what we're selling to you. So I'm hard pressed to find any area why you wouldn't do this. Most importantly today, again, with the public's expectation that they're getting the best return on the investment of their dollars, they want to see law enforcement efforts spent in a way, and the money associated with those efforts in a way that protects them best, not as managing their off-duty details.
It's interesting what you mentioned, the customization. Almost everything that's on the market, whether, and it's not necessarily around extra duty, but in public safety, be CAD systems, radios, those kind of things, require some degree in which the department has to adapt to that product. One of the things with extra duty solutions is that, you know, we own our own software company, and the way that relationship kind of evolved was early on, we needed a good partner. And so after much research, came up and found Jivasoft down in Texas. It's a great company that's doing competitive on-duty and off-duty management through software. And then, you know, just a few years later, with the growth of extra duty solutions, we were able to acquire the entire company. And so there is no extra set of hands to make the changes.
Right.
Our CEO often talks about that, you know, it's a matter of flipping the switches within the software to customize it for you. And that's an incredible product. My own department, when we went into a partnership with Extra Duty Solutions, you know, we wanted to do things as we had, but maybe make them better. Mm-hmm. I implemented a 30-minute gap between on and off duty. Unfortunately, we had some folks in my organization that, you know, we're leaving their job at 5 o'clock p.m. and starting with a local jewelry store doing security at 5 o'clock p.m. And we know that what that equation means, somebody is not getting what they're paying for, whether it be the municipality or the outsider. So I put a 30-minute requirement in between. I think it's reasonable, and my folks, they understood it. But no more than 2 pay cycles down, our school resource officers come back and said, but wait a minute, Chief, I do leave at 5 o'clock and I start getting paid for the football game in the parking lot, or, you know, right across the parking lot at 5 o'clock. So I made the phone call to Extra Duty and I said, man, can we change this? And literally, it's flipped the switch. It's changed the profile of the individual officer so that only for those games that are being paid for by the Board of Education. And that kind of customization is rare in our world. I mean, it truly is when you think of software or what we do.
And you know, to your point, every agency is different. Every agency has their own unique rules. The unions themselves negotiate, you know, things that are particular to their collective bargaining organization, and the fact that Extra Duty is able to accommodate all of it. The organization I came from, we had the 6-hour rule. You had to be off duty for 6 hours before you could pick up an off-duty shift. So, man, again, that may be the extreme in the other direction. But the fact that it's able to accommodate both is really unique.
Some places have the total number of hours have to be managed or what have you. You know, the other thing is we do have on-duty software, and we make that all available to our clients, but there's a lot of on-duty scheduling out there, and the fact that we can partner up in a multitude of ways to make sure that we can take that into account and we can report it back to you. You know, and my city, we already had a program in place to monitor what we were doing on a daily basis for on-duty, and of course it was a citywide program, and I didn't really want to tackle trying to change it. So instead, we simply do a data dump of that schedule into the Extra Duty Solution software. And if you're scheduled to work and you try to take an off-duty gig, it doesn't stop you, but it puts up a warning sign. It puts a flag up. It looks like that you're going to be double dipping. My officers had the opportunity. Okay, well, I called my supervisor. I made the adjustment, and they can push through and take the assignment. But on a 7-day period, I would get a report, an audit report, if you would, of all the people who pushed through that warning. So in my situation, it went from me having analyzed a schedule of 800 people to having an admin look at the 3 or 4 folks who pushed through it, and half of them, they legitimately had worked over, they had a trade day, whatever the case was, but it made our internal management of that element so much easier.
Right, and the public actually believes this stuff exists already, right? It's inconceivable to them that, you know, they go to work every day and they're punching a clock and they're doing things. their expectation is those same types of systems that manage their day-to-day operations, their day-to-day business relationships are in place in ours. And we know on occasion, quite often in fact, well, we are managing things, particularly relative to off-duty, in a way that would be very difficult to justify to the public if they really knew it.
Shift gears for a minute. So one of the things you and I were talking about before we actually sat down was just kind of the uniqueness, the financial float that Extra Duty Solutions offers, and really being police executives that's a big deal. We don't want our folks collecting money. We don't want our folks trying to collect bad debt. And so, you know, as you travel the country and you've done all the things through Rodgers Group, what's your perspective on what we do with that?
It's unique, right? So, and I look at it twofold. I start with the taxpayer, right? The idea that the taxpayer should be funding a private contractor's business, meaning that if, you know, the police officer, rightly so, he or she working that shift, the off-duty job for name your company that is digging a hole or putting in a new construction project, the idea that the taxpayer is going to front the money to the police officer, that really the bill's due and payable by the construction outfit. That's fundamentally unfair, in my estimation anyhow. And the fact of the matter is the public, for the most part, doesn't right reality. It's a, you know, I'd say a secret in some respects that the, you know, municipal governments, county governments around the country, more often than not, have adapted to. But I would say that's not proper. Right. Extra Duty, you know, Solutions provisions for that, right? They're floating the money. Right. It's not on the taxpayer. The second piece of it is, you know, the idea that our officers become revenue agents, you know, chasing down the contractor that, you know, owes the city money or owes them money, is improper, and it undermines our credibility. It's just that pure and simple. So anything that I think we can do to divest public safety operations from collecting debts, being associated with money in those things, is a good thing for all the reasons, not the least of which is the inference that can be drawn, correct or incorrect, that we're doing something that we shouldn't be doing. So to be proactive, to, you know, push that out so that nobody could even infer that, we're all the better.
Well, you know, some of it is as simple as the visual. You know, and about half the agencies we encounter across the country, they allow their officers to actually collect debt, or they take cash to some degree. And that, of course, is by far the most risky. And then you have the visual of that, you know, you have an officer who's working an event, maybe an outdoor concert, and at the end of the night, everybody's got a camera now, sees that officer walk up and take the envelope from somebody and stick it in their pocket. That just looks bad. You know, and then the implications of what's the officer doing with that? Are they paying their taxes? All those questions come up. That's half of it. And then the other half is really the city. And you know what I found is the city doesn't do as good a job, or municipal government, state governments, they just don't do a fantastic job when it comes to collecting. And so, like you said, bad debt, carrying the debt, you know, paying the interest on that side, where and I'll just say currently for Extra Duty Solutions, we paid out over $50 million in the last 12 months. And 99.5% of all that is 100% of it's been paid on time, because we always cover that. But 99.5% of it we've collected on time, because the rules for collection are different when you're not part of government, and we're more efficient, to be quite honest with you. You know, we have folks that's what they do all day long. And so when you look at that, and you look at that, you're paid on time, the officers are paid on time, regardless of when the collection's done. You know, in my own city, when we went to this model of collection where Extra Duty's taking care of everything, we're hands off, we found that actually our contractors, our businesses started scheduling more with us, because it kind of took some of their burden away. You know, if you're the manager or the regional manager for the movie theater, now all of a sudden you're being invoiced and it goes to whatever out-of-state entity that pays your bills, and I don't worry that I have to do it every 2 weeks. And so it becomes a little bit more of a business transaction.
Well, that's things that attracted me to Extra Duty in the first place. It's a win in every respect. So the police officers win, the public wins, the vendors who are looking to hire off-duty officers win. And then when you peer in from the outside and look at this, well, all of it makes sense. This is good business, and at the end of the day, the taxpayer is the principal beneficiary of it. I like seeing the police officers happy, and they want to work with a program that is easy to use and so on and so forth, so they're happy. And the vendor, they're happy because they're dealing with a business and not a government that's not set up to do that type of work in the first place. And that's important, but the most important piece is the public we serve, and this meets that smell test in every respect when it comes to that.
It's interesting you mentioned that. A lot of the chiefs, the colonels that we interact with, one of the things that kind of becomes really apparent to them is through our model here at Extra Duty Solutions, we're putting the cost of the program on the folks using it. You mentioned the word taxpayer, and in so many jurisdictions, the taxpayer is footing the bill for everybody's off duty. And when we're in a time in our country right now where people are questioning every single dime that comes through the government, it's an interesting discussion when you think about it. If you run, because we interact with departments that have multiple personnel. Before my department interacted with or went with Extra Duty Solutions, I had an administrative person, I had some sworn personnel that were working there, and that's 100% what their job was, because we felt it was really important to keep that eye out. And I think a lot of agencies across the country feel the same way. Now all of a sudden, the majority of that overhead, that administrative cost, is being paid by the people using the service, not by the taxpayer. The run-of-the-mill, I live in the city, I don't own a business, folks are not paying that bill through their taxes, and that can be pretty significant.
Well, it's especially if you're a big city, the float, the money that is fronted by the taxpayer in order to continue to accommodate a vendor that's looking to do work in the city, it's just fundamentally unfair. And we get away with it because, by and large, the public doesn't understand that. But the public becomes more and more aware, rightly so, of how we do business every day, right? There isn't an hour that you don't pick up a newspaper or get a text on your phone about something else being, law enforcement being castigated for something someplace else. This is something that's entirely avoidable, right? To me, it never made sense. I grew up, I know you might, my story, right? I've been associated with public safety, my family for 5 generations. So this is, what's, clothed my children, my dad, my grandfather, and everybody before him since they immigrated into the United States. So it's this big, my dad raised us where there are certain things that you avoid because you never want anybody to infer or imply that you're up to no good. And I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that our peers are up to no good, but I don't think we do as good a job as we can and should relative to this subject matter by failing to proactively build systems in place that would prevent anybody from ever saying we were doing something we weren't supposed to do. Particularly something at the end of the day, from a business perspective, doesn't make any sense. Why would you take a law enforcement executive or a mid-level manager, somebody that we've hired, purposely trained, kept their in-service up to date, equipped them to do the public's business, to protect them, and have them do something like manage off-duty side jobs? Why would we do that? Doesn't make any sense.
Well, and I'm sure with your background, you've heard the same thing I have. The perspective, the belief that something is wrong in the system is just as bad as something actually being wrong. And you're exactly right in that, the perspective that now that we have this run by a professional business, this is what we do. One of the things that I'll get asked sometimes is, so what are we getting out of this? What's the benefit? That's from an officer's perspective. The fact that you have a single point of contact, whatever jurisdiction we go into, we either do one or multiple phone numbers. They can contact us through our portal online, and they can do it 24/7. And at 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you have one of our employees answer the phone, and their job is solely to make sure that the experience is good. That if you're looking to hire, that we onboard you, if we schedule it correctly, we tell you what the detail is going to consist of. This is what the officers are allowed to do in their individual jurisdiction, because it varies. And then when you get an invoice from us, it's going to have all the data on it you want. That experience alone it's eons ahead what most police departments, what most sheriff's departments have been able to do. Let's be honest, if we hired someone in administrative support and a call came at 2 o'clock in the morning, it went to voicemail. and sometime the next day I'll call you. And so that in itself has really netted us something really unique. So the company has tracked since the beginning, looking to see, so what is the workflow? Do we gain, do we lose, what have you? And unbelievably, in some degree, we do add a small administrative fee, but we still see across the board, across all our agencies, an increase, on average 3%. Some departments more. Mine was actually more than that. Because of those efficiencies.
No, I get it. And look, and that administrative fee is not borne by the taxpayer, it's borne by the vendor that's looking to contract a public asset, the police officer. So again, fundamentally unfair that the public would bear that cost in any way, shape, or form. Right. So look, having done the type of work that we're talking about here, as a police officer, I wanted it as simply as possible. I wanted it, whatever system was in place, respectful of the contract that we fought to have and put in place, which the extra duty does, right? It's customizable to every venue that employs us. But so as that police officer, we've made it extremely easy for them to, much better than they would if they did it in-house. And we've done it without the city, the venue, incurring any costs. They're borne by who they should be borne by, the contractor that's looking to retain that governmental asset. So I don't know. Again, to me, it's a win-win. Anytime you can, this isn't just a win-win. It's a win-win-win. Everybody that's party this particular transaction is winning, and at every level. I've yet to have a conversation with anybody that can point to some reason why you wouldn't do this, other than the fact that, well, this is the way we've always done it. Well, thank God the world doesn't run that way, right? We learn from our mistakes. We learn to bring efficiencies to our operations. The fact the public expects that at all times from us. And this is the type of task that is ripe for the public to benefit, to transition this to the private sector.
There's a few different levels of what we do, and unfortunately some people look at it kind of under one big umbrella. So you got what our CEO calls the Wild West. We always laugh about that. So what's the Wild West? The Wild West is those police departments, those police agencies that really turn a blind eye to it, and those are the ones that scare us the most. I'm sure you're the same way. That our officers go out and we allow them to wear their uniform, they make a little extra money, and we don't want to get involved. So you got that going on at more places than I like and you like as a police professional, because those are by far the most dangerous. Then you go up a level. You have organizations which have some kind of internal system, and they send us a card once a year, tell us they're working at the movie theater, and we approve it once a year, but we really don't keep up with it. Then you start moving into an area where there may be some of what some people would see as folks that do kind of what we do. And I say kind of because there's several layers. There are software companies that go out there and they help that second layer maybe monitor a little bit. Maybe it's a timekeeping software and they have a drop down that says if they're not on duty, you can put this in. All the way up to software companies which will still have internal resources, still have those officers making the decisions, still scheduling all that, but maybe they do billing for them. Then you start moving into the groups where we're a little bit more involved with, where maybe they do through software, but they use the city's personnel to be the contacts, and they bill, and they'll send the money to the city, and the city distributes it, all the way up to what we do, which is full service. Luckily, truthfully, there are very few competitors of what we do. Honestly, I don't know that anyone is at the level we're at. There are a few folks who think they're there, but when you look at that, everything that we do out of our 4 operation centers is going to be one of our employees. We don't ship that out. We don't use call centers, those kind of things. That really separates us from our competitors. When you pick up that phone at 2 in the morning or 2 p.m., it's going to be one of our W-2 employees that has a direct link through our software to know your system, what your city, county, state, municipality has asked for, right up to your own account manager, which is going to work business hours typically wherever you're at in the country, but that backup account team is available. So we really pride ourselves in that, and I think that's what separates us from a lot of our competitors. Mention the software, it's ours. How many times in law enforcement have you dealt with in-car radars or CAD systems, and you try to make a change, and it's always, let me send an email to whoever. And the beauty of with extra duty solutions, 100% is we meet with our clients. We do an onboarding meeting, which is it's fairly detailed to learn how they do it. Part of what I did, or I do, is a position here with the company is if they need help with policy, if they have questions, I have a background there. I reach out to folks like yourself on our advisory board. We learn what's going on in the country, help you shape your policy, because a lot of departments are going from the Wild West up to here. They don't have it.
No, Abe, look, the fact that it is a business, right, and extra duty cannot afford to stay status quo, because there are other competitors in the space. That the fact that matters that in my estimation, no one even close to you. But that's largely because you can constantly investing in the software, constantly taking the temperature of your client base, improving at all times, and the cost of that's not borne by the taxpayer or the police department. I like that. It makes sense for me. Those things that lend themselves to being outsourced to experts, to the private sector, that benefit the public safety apparatus, all the better. It's been my experience, those things that we reluctantly hold in and insist that we continue to do, when I say we, I'm talking about the public safety apparatus, when we're not really equipped to do it, where we build something that maintains the status quo, but the fact of the matter is there's so many different influences that should be adjusting that status quo regularly, which extra duty has to do in order to remain competitive, that the public sector will never do because they don't have the resources to do it.
One of the things that we get a lot of questions about, and it's interesting the way you just phrased that, not only can we replace it, we actually make it better, and that's through things like our insurance. Every single person who's working extra duty under our umbrella, you're looking at a really robust $7 million insurance policy to cover their actions. That's huge. In the litigious society we have now, of someone with the best of intentions, best of goodwill, and you knock something off a counter and it breaks somebody's foot. So what happens? And so to give that extra layer of protection for our folks, it's invaluable. And we even have a really great relationship with our insurance provider, and we make it very, very clear that if you pay out, hopefully you won't, but if you do, we don't want you going after the city, we don't want you going after the individual officers, and so they've agreed to that. And so we become the insurance up front. And $7 million, it's a pretty substantial coverage when you think about what our folks do out here day in, day out to have that coverage. And then of course, we offer workers' comp. We're competitive on that. I had to learn coming into this side of the business that the workers' comp rates are set by state. And so we simply, if an organization, a municipality, a county, state, whatever, they want us to cover their workers' comp, we don't make a dime off that. We do that, we're the conduit. And again, it's paid by the individual company entity that's contracting the officer. And you put that cost where it should be.
100%. And look, that's just something that never even hits the radar of places that are doing this on their own. And I always, if to steal one from Gordon Graham, right? I think everybody knows Gordon. We're all big fans. If it's predictable, it's preventable. This is predictable. Right. Anybody from the outside, especially anybody who's on the job like we've been, you look at the way extra duty is managed in some places. Look, that's a ticking time bomb. It's going to be a problem at some point down the road, and the law enforcement executive is going to be hard pressed to explain when that does go off why they chose to do something that's inconsistent with best practice. It really, in fact, defies logic. So to maintain that status quo at the expense of what will be a problem, I assure you, at some point down the road, just indefensible.
No, and that was well said. It is the obligation of a leader to look at how you can protect your organization and continue to refine what you do. And this is a great example of that. I think from sitting as a retired police chief, I can't think of many things that are kind of there that use that win-win-win. It doesn't cost you. It's there to help you, whether it be through the public records request we talked about, or maintaining your information in a way that's really at a higher level than city IT typically has the opportunity to do it. And then the financial cost. It's floating the debt. It's looking at the insurance that's involved. It's just one of those things that as a leader, you have to be willing to go out there and change that norm. And that's always the most difficult thing. You know, where they say police officers hate two things: they hate the status quo and they hate change.
But this reality exists. They can, try to resist, but this tsunamis offshore. This is the type of thing that we, as a profession, would be. It would be a good move to just say, hey, look, recognize what right looks like. Take whatever resources that you have dedicated to this task now, who see it as, like it or not, it's an ancillary responsibility, not something that they were purposely trained to do. Put them doing what they're supposed to do, and let the professionals take care of this for you.
Well, Frank, thanks for coming in, spending a few minutes of conversation. I always enjoy catching up with a fellow retiree, especially when we talk about something like the advantages here at Extra Duty Solutions.
Well, I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to meet with you guys. I genuinely enjoy talking about this. This is something that I deal with in one way, shape, or form every day. So it's, again, hopefully I'm helpful.